Hey, hello. Ada, could you hear me?
Hey, Dan. Yeah, hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay. So I will introduce you in Chinese first. So please wait a moment. Okay. Okay, let's start, and I will introduce you as first. 大家好，非常欢迎大家来参加今天晚上的 Open Space。Open Space 是由Rebase 登链和 OpenBuild 联合主办的技术的系列分享活动。然后我们希望帮助开发者们更好的进入 Web3 和了解 Web3 的前沿技术。然后今天晚上我们非常荣幸的邀请Hyperlane 的开发者播道师 Ada 给大家来分享一个基于Hyperlane 的 跨链互操作性的一个实践吧，它会讲到关于这个跨链和互操作性的基础知识，以及如何基于 Hyperlane 构建一个跨链桥的实战，然后也会为大家带来关于说在未来的这个Web3 的应用开发中，如何为多链的应用集成这个互操作性的一些使用指南。然后我们今晚的直播是以英文形式，但大家放心，我们之后会在这个结束之后会整理相关的视频和字幕文件，欢迎方便大家回顾。对，好，然后我会邀请这个 Ada 正式的开始。OK, Ada, could you hear me?
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah,
I can get started.
Yeah. We close ending the open speech. Okay, you can start your presentation now. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Hi everyone. Apologies, my Chinese is not able to understand that was my turn yet. But let me start by presenting my screen, and then I'll do a small intro about myself, Hyperlane, and then what this workshop will be about is we'll be building a Hyperlane warp route, which is our implementation of token bridging. So the goal of the workshop will be you have like a token on one chain, we will use Base, and then you want to transfer it to another chain, like you want to create like another version on another chain. So that's exactly what we'll be doing. We'll go step by step. So hopefully we'll cover every step of the way and answer all the questions you might have about Hyperlane, warp routes, or any other question that pops up. But let me start by sharing my screen, and then I'll give a nicer introduction over there. I have over here my presentation. Let me see how I can share my screen. Okay, let me share my entire screen because I couldn't find how to share this. Okay, can you see my presentation right now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hi again, everyone. My name is Eda, and I'm a developer advocate at Hyperlane. What I do is I work around educational content and developer education on Hyperlane, which is a cross-chain interoperability protocol. So what we do at Hyperlane is we build the infrastructure for different blockchains to communicate. So what we'll be presenting today is kind of the ecosystem and how Hyperlane fits in. And the theme of the workshop is to be building our implementation of token bridging, which is called Hyperlane Superbridge. And I've been in the Ethereum space mainly for the last 4 years now. And it's been 1 year into interoperability place. And I think it's the most exciting because there's a lot going on, especially with so many new developments, changes. I think it's definitely like one of the most fast-paced areas. So hopefully what I present today will be very useful for you. And you can continue to build with Hyperlane and have any follow-ups, happy to answer afterwards. But to take a step back, right, like I mentioned that I've been in the interop space for a year now and that it's kind of growing. Let's talk about the why. So first of all, today we are in a multi-chain world. So what this means is that there are more than one chain that we interact with on a daily basis. Like if you are a person working on DeFi or like inside the Ethereum ecosystem or any other blockchain ecosystem, actually, you are likely interacting with more than a single chain. And I'll specifically be focusing on Ethereum, but I think most similarly, like you can the concepts are transferable to other ecosystems as well. But what happened with Ethereum is that in 2020, Vitalik introduced the rollup-centric roadmap. Before Ethereum was one chain, but then it got very congested with like so many ISPs, starting out with CryptoKitties. And then Vitalik was like, okay, these Teslas are unusable. Let's introduce like a new scaling roadmap because previously it was not sustainable with sharding. So they said, okay, like let's have like a rollup-centric Ethereum roadmap where instead of like having a single rollup, instead of having like a single network, there will be all these other layer 2s that connect and settle on Ethereum. And that is kind of how we ended up in the multi-chain world. And that solved Ethereum's most biggest problems, right? Like the gas costs are not too high. You can make a transaction with a single penny. So that actually really worked out. But what left us with is a very fragmented ecosystem. And today, what we see is interoperability between rollups are sparse and highly fragmented. So you have over here like Arbitrum, you have over here Base, you have OP mainnet, but by default, most of these networks do not talk to each other. So they are living on their own in like an island. So like if you build like an application on Base, if you have like your token on Base, you cannot like be like, okay, I actually want to interact with the Unichain. So that is kind of what I mean by it's fragmented and sparse. And what does this mean for users? Well, on daily basis, this means that you are likely interacting with so many networks when you click your MetaMask pop-up. You see like, +7 networks or even more. You can see kind of that drop down. So that's really hard to manage. It's not the user experience, especially for someone who just uses like Stripe or something very easy to pay for their transactions. This is really like unlikely going to get adopted. And yeah, this is essentially not fine. And we need to find a solution for this because this doesn't only impact the users who are interacting. So like, it's not that you only see, 7 networks on MetaMask, but it also means that you are highly likely that you're limited to those sets, like through the people on those chains. So if you build an application on Base, it's highly likely that most of your users or most of your application users will be on Base and not coming from other networks. So if you're a developer building, this limits your potential of reach. So this is exactly where permissionless cross-chain interoperability comes in. And I know that's a mouthful, so I'll break it down one by one. Permissionless cross-chain interoperability means that when you have all these different networks, you want to connect them without having to go and like apply through a central entity, but you want to have like built-in communication, a bridge to transfer assets and messages without having to request permission, because especially what we see with a lot of these, roll up as a service providers coming up is that it is so easy to deploy your own layer 2 network. But that doesn't mean that it is going to be useful if you're only limited to the own environment you are on. So when you have permissionless cross-chain interoperability, is you can directly access, the whole user base and all that's going on other chains without having to go and ask for permission. And I know this sounds like a very abstract concept, so hopefully the workshop will make it a bit more concrete. And this is exactly where Hyperlane comes in. Hyperlane is a permissionless interoperability protocol for cross-chain communications. What this means is Hyperlane is building the infrastructure for different blockchains to communicate without having to go ahead and request permissionless from anyone else. So it gives you the basic building blocks so that you can build those bridges between different networks. And yes, just to recap, especially because I don't really like to introduce new terminology, but I feel like these are the ones which are very basic and which are required to kind of understand a bit more. But permissionless refers to the fact that anyone can connect new chains or run their own infrastructure without needing approval. So as we mentioned, when you want to deploy like a new work route, which we will be doing, you don't need to go ahead and be like, hey, can I please have like permission to deploy this bridge between this chain and this chain? But you could just go ahead and do that. Simplified cross-chain communication, this is what I mean by the building blocks for messaging between chains. So you don't really need to build everything from scratch, but you can use what's already built out of the box. And then the third component, which I actually did not mention yet, is modular security. So modular security refers to how you can configure your security settings on Hyperlane. So what this means is that Hyperlane gives you different options according to your use case to use like the security modules that you need. So you can opt in for, a multi-sig security option. You can go by a ZK security option or some kind of off-chain security verification. But essentially what this means is that when messages are passed from one chain to another chain, how do you want to make that message valid by the security you're adding? So let's say like if I send a message from Base to Optimism, how do I know that this is true? That is where I use like a security building block. Let's say I use like a ZK ISM, which is like our security module basically. And I verify that message was actually sent through that ISM itself. And it's very flexible. So, for example, like a game may require like speed rather than security, but like a financial application requires security more. So yeah, it really depends on the use case and how the developer decides to implement it. So let me get into the infrastructure a bit. This is going to be a technical workshop, so we'll also be deploying, and I think this is very relevant in that sense. But the way Hyperlane works is that you have your two chains, right? The origin chain and the destination chain. To make it a bit more concrete, let's call it like base and OP mainnets. So there is the sender. The sender is like a contract or well, a person can actually interact with the contract first. And then, but there's a sender contract which interacts with the mailbox. The mailbox is a Hyperlane concept which refers to your entry and exit into that chain. So you can think of it like as an API, which allows you to interact with the origin and destination chain. So every message that you send into the mailbox of that chain will route it to the specific contract. And then the way the system works is that there are these off-chain agents that are the relayers, and you might have validators according to your security module, which carry the messages unverified. So a simple flow is that you send a message to the mailbox, the relayer, which is the off-chain agent, carries the message to the other chain's mailbox, and then before it is sent to the recipient, it is verified by your security module settings. And you can find all the address, like for example, the address of the mailbox inside the Hyperlane registry, and we'll show how you can get that as well. But this is essentially kind of like a very high level overview of how general message passing works in Hyperlane. There are like extra concepts which we'll be talking about when you talk about warp routes, because then you need to interact with like specific contracts. But when you think of it, the system as a whole, you have like a sender, you interact with the mailbox. As we mentioned, it is like your API into those chains. The mailbox sends it to the relayer, which is like a messenger that carries it from one chain to another. And then the mailbox on the other side receives it. It makes sure that the message is valid, and then it sends it to the recipient. I just want to check if we have, like, I will also like leave time for questions in the end, but I can't see the chat right now. So if there are any questions, feel free to like say them out loud, and we can like kind of answer some of the burning questions if there are too many. But yeah, I don't like see the chat right now on my screen. So please bear with me and feel free to like stop me and ask me questions as well. Okay, so yes, go for it.
No problem. 大家看有没有什么问题？然后如果有问题，可以在评论区发出来。然后如果在看直播间的小伙伴，也可以在评论区发一下。然后我们会有小伙伴会收集大家的问题。对。Okay, no problem. You can go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we mentioned about Hyperlane general message passing. Now I want to specifically talk about Hyperlane warp routes, which I've mentioned a few times, but they are essentially Hyperlane's flavor of token bridging. Now, the Hyperlane warp routes uses Hyperlane's infrastructure that we mentioned on this slide in the underlying concepts, but it adds some extra things like the ERC20 contracts when you want to like send a token from one chain to another to make it easier. So the way I like to describe it, it uses Hyperlane infrastructure to make token bridging easier for the user that is using it. And you can have different type of warp routes. I don't want to get into the details over here because I will actually illustrate with an example. But essentially what we're going to be doing in our workshop is we're going to be taking a token that is an ERC20 on base. So that is a collateral token because it already exists on base. And we will lock it in an ERC20 contract, and we will allow the user to mint a synthetic version of it on another chain. So this will be a collateral-backed ERC20 warp route because we are already using a token that is not the native token of the chain, but it is an ERC20 already deployed, already exists on one chain to move it to another chain. And you might think like, okay, why would I do this? But when you want to transfer assets and when you don't want to be limited to a single chain, that is very useful for you to do. So like, let's say you want to interact with a dApp that is not on the chain on base, but you want to use your tokens and you want to prove that you have ownership of a certain set of tokens, you can use like a warp route concept. So this is just to add on to the previous infrastructure graph that we mentioned. You can see like the similar concepts here, which is the mailbox, the relayer, the Interchain Security Modules. But we added like a few extra contracts, which is essentially what WordPress does, is it deploys these additional contracts for you, so you can directly talk with the mailbox, like send the message through the relayer, through the other chain, automatically have all the setup for you. So it's essentially building on the Hyperlane infrastructure for a very specific use case, that is sending a token from one chain to another. And now I've been talking about Ethereum mainly, but you can have workouts for both Ethereum, Solana chains, and Cosmos as well using Hyperlane. This is like one of the main examples, and that's why I'm going to be demoing this. But it is possible to make like also an EVM to SVM workout, and I'll be showing you where you can find all the information on the docs as well. But I do just want to call out that it is not only an EVM concept. Okay, well, let's go to doing it already, right? And for those who want to follow along, I will be following this Hyperlane developer workshop that I have on my GitHub repository. You can directly scan the QR code or head over to this GitHub repository, which I've added over here in my own GitHub called Adapter14, and it's Hyperlane developer workshop. It also contains like some basic information on the concepts that we discussed, but yeah, I'll just give like a moment for anyone who wants to scan the QR code. Okay, perfect. I think we are ready to start. Let me just check to see if there are like any, what is the security preference and which kind of verification mechanism? That's a great question. And I can actually, like, even before going there, let me head over to the docs to show a few things and where you can essentially find everything. I'm over here at the Hyperlane documentation. So for everything regarding the protocol details, you can go over here to the Learn tab, and you can like find everything which I mentioned, like the protocol overview, how it works, like the mailbox contracts, the relayer, where it works. And for the different ISMs, you can go over here and read about the modular security options. You can see over here, we already have some built-in ISMs, like the multi-sig ISM, the routing ISM. There are also like some community ISMs, which are built by the wider community. So it essentially allows you to use whichever setting you would like. And the one that's most used is the multi-sig ISM. There's usually like a number of validators which have to sign that the message is like from the certain source that is specified in order for it to be verified. And this is the one which we have seen mostly used today. You can also, it's also very transparent. So you can find all the addresses on the Hyperlane registry as well, on like what kind of security model the warp routes used, everything used. And in fact, like let's actually show it. So when I go over here to the Hyperlane registry, I can see all the chain details, which allows me to see like the chain mailbox IDs that I talked about. So like, let's go to base since we're going to be using that. You can come over here to the addresses. You can see all the address details, the mailbox. This is where I send my messages. So then they are sent, like they are sent from base or to base. This is like your entry point into the base network, basically. And you can see this for all the different chains that Hyperlane is connected to. Hyperlane is currently connected to over 150 chains. So hopefully the chain that you want to interact with is already connected. And let's say that it isn't. Let's say that you just built like you deployed your own L2 network. You're like, how do I get that started? Well, you can actually go over here and you can follow the guide to set up Hyperlane on your own chain. So it is completely permissionless to deploy. So you can follow this guide and you can set Hyperlane on your own chain. And the guide that we're going to follow today is how to bridge a token. I already have a GitHub repository where I kind of set up like a small workshop to follow along, but this is essentially the guide that we're following. And if you want to do an SVM warp route, you can follow here, an EVM to SVM here. Basically everything under warp routes is what you are looking for. Okay, let's go to the demo already, and then we'll try and cover some more basics afterwards. Okay, I hope I answered the question. It seems so. I'm gonna head over here to my GitHub repository to show you the workshop. Unfortunately, I have a single screen today, but we're making it work, so that's okay. So this is the Hyperlane developer workshop that I'm going to be following. This contains like the basic information, which we talked about, and then the step-by-step to create and deploy a warp route. Before we get started, everything I'm going to do today is going to be on my terminal. The only things I did before is I did do like 3 things before coming in today because I didn't want to spend time like downloading and installing stuff. So I have the Hyperlane CLI installed, and you can install it by following the command here. You can use like the npm install Hyperlane CLI command, and then you can make sure that you are on the latest version. One other thing I did is I added my private key as export hide key and my private key. The reason you need to add your private key is because what we are doing with Hyperlane warp routes is we are deploying those additional contracts, like the locking contract, the EVM Hype 20 contracts to lock the tokens in, and then to mint on the other end the synthetic tokens. So you need to pay for the gas fee to deploy those contracts. So essentially, you do need to input your private key. If you don't input your private key, the CLI will automatically ask you. But since we're doing a live workshop, I already added it to make it easier for us. Okay, I think we can get started now. I am here on my terminal. Let me move it here so then we can. Okay. Oh, how can I? Okay, I think this is bigger. Let's just make it a bit bigger. I hope that I just did it before coming here as well to make sure that everything works, that we're going to be started from scratch. Is this big enough? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is Hyperlane warp init. So warp routes, I'm using the Hyperlane CLI, and what Hyperlane warp init does is it initializes a warp route configuration for us. So it will ask me, okay, like you want to do a warp route. What kind of warp route do you want to do? I select the network that I want, and I'm going to do a mainnet deployment actually today. It's going to cost me like 5 cents because it's going to be on base and OP mainnet, so it's going to be pretty cheap, but you can also use testnet too. I'll use base. And then I will choose, you can see all the networks that are already in the Hyperlane registry. We go down to Optimism. For example, yeah, you have Osmosis, some of the networks which I'm not very familiar with, Optimism, and then enter. So when you choose from the CLI, you need to press space and then enter. Base and Optimism, yes. Is this the address? Yes. So this is automatically coming from the address that I inputted before. I say yes. If it doesn't have one, it will ask you for it. And then use existing proxy admin contract for warp route deployment on chain base. So I will actually do this, yes. And to do this, I come over here to the Hyperlane registry to find the addresses. So this allows the contract to be upgradable. And since this is like a demo, we can actually skip it, but I just want to show where you can find it. I can go over here to the Hyperlane registry, to the base chain, and then I can see over here the proxy admin contract and the aggregation host, for example, the interchain account ISM. So the proxy admin contract is over here. Since we already found it, we can just copy this. I'll skip the ISM configuration for now, but you can use the basics and you can just follow along with saying yes and use the trusted ISM. Select basis token. Okay, so this is actually one of the key parts of warp route deployments is your token selection. Because we are using a token that is already an ERC20 on base, it is a collateral token. So I'm going to use the FAI token. FAI token. No reason that special reason. It's just I already have like some tokens on it. So I will show how you can use that to transfer and create a synthetic version on another chain. So I will choose collateral. Enter the existing token address on chain base. Yes. So I come over here because I'm using the Phi token, that is a collateral token on Base. I already have it here, but basically what you can do is Base scanner, tokens, or how can I go to Base? Yeah, this is what I wanted. So you can basically see all the tokens on Base. We will be using the Phi token. I can actually go to like currencies, and I think I can filter by chain. But yeah, you can go over here and you can find the token that you want to bridge. I'm pretty sure there's like a way to filter by base, but I'm not going to waste time with that right now. But I'm going to be using the token, which is the Phi token. Okay. Did I get the correct address? Yes. So when you're selecting the address, make sure that you select the address for the right network, because there's sometimes like 2-3 networks that the contract is deployed on, but this one is on Base. So there's like, that's just a common error, which I see myself doing. I add this. This is correct. Yes. Use the, yes. So we can go back to Optimism. This is also all outlined in the GitHub repository, but I just want to show the actual way of like doing it usually. Add it here. I will skip the ISM for now. So, okay. On Base, we already have our token. It is an ERC20 token. It is the Phi token. It will be locked into the contract. And on Optimism, we want a mint and new version. So what we want the Hyperlane warp route to do is we want it to create like a synthetic token. So it will automatically deploy as the contract the mint synthetic tokens on the destination chain. Perfect. So I selected enter, and then it gave me like a config. It created like a file over here, configs.warproute-deployment.yaml, and it gives me like all the details of this YAML file. You can see over here, I have the proxy admin, I have the owner, which is me. I have the token type and token details. And what I'm going to do next is Hyperlane warp deploy. So this is the second step. As you saw, there's like only 2 steps involved, like Hyperlane warp init, choose the settings, and then Hyperlane warp deploy to deploy the warp route. This is where you verify that the contract is, you know, where the config looks as you want it to look like. And yeah, the deployment plan looks right. So I'll click yes. And then this is where it will actually ask for your private key if you did not input it before. But since we already have it, it's not asking me. This takes like a few minutes. Well, maybe 1-2 minutes. It's deploying all the contracts, and then once it deploys, we'll actually see our Hyperlane warp routes. But it takes a few moments for all the transactions to be completed. And during that time, what I can show you is the last step where we'll actually interact with the Hyperlane warp route will be on the Hyperlane Superbridge app. So this was built to use Hyperlane warp routes in the Superchain ecosystem, but you can also test your Hyperlane warp routes by using like this customized feature over here. So once this creates like the YAML file, we'll actually be able to interact with our warp route directly from this Hyperlane Superbridge UI. You can also directly use the Hyperlane warp UI template as well. That's super handy and helpful to use. For the purpose of this demo, I'm not going to be utilizing that right now, but deploying a bridge UI for Hyperlane warp routes shows you both the options, like using the Superbridge UI or also deploying the warp route UI out of the box. As you can see, successfully deployed contracts on Optimism. I think they successfully deployed contracts on Base. This is the other message which we got as well. So yeah, just a few moments for the contracts to be deployed, and then hopefully we'll be able to utilize our warp routes. Awesome. We just deployed a warp route token bridge between Base and Optimism. And this is the YAML file. I am going to copy this. I am actually going to interact with this as well. It tells us the gas usage statistics. Let me actually show what this folder created. Essentially, this just created like a configs file. And under it, you see the warp route deployment YAML. This was what was generated by the whole commands. You can see configs and then warp route deployment YAML with the configurations that you kind of wanted to have as we selected on the CLI commands. So yeah, just to let you know that it just creates like a small file. And now what I'm going to do is, as you saw, I copied this YAML file. Let's just make sure we actually copy it once more. Copy it. I go over here once again to the Hyperlane Superbridge app. I want to customize and I want to add this file. I copy this. You can see chain name base, the standard, and then there is chain name optimism, and then the details, the phi token, etc. And now what we can do is let's change from base, because I have like, it is a collateral to synthetic token warp route. So basically what you need to have is you need to have some tokens already on the collateral chain in order to mint the other ones on the synthetic. If you try to directly bridge from synthetic to the other side, it will be like you haven't like created any synthetic tokens yet. So just to be aware of like when you create the warp routes, like make sure to know, okay, like where am I deploying the token? Where is the collateral already at? So it's going to be a base to OP mainnet one. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to select the phi token. And what I want to do is I want to connect my wallet. I already have like a small amount of phi token. Let me move this here. This is like, I have almost 180 phi tokens. That is like, I think $3. So let's send 10 from base to Optimism. And it is going to use the bridge the token bridge, the warp route that we already created. So the fee, let's review the bridge. I've already read this a few times, but if you're interacting the first time, make sure that you read all the disclaimers. I'll just skip this for now. What we are doing is we are using the token bridge that we deployed from base to Optimism for the phi token. This is going to take a few moments, and then we'll actually also see this on the Hyperlane Explorer and the relative block explorers. Let's see this on base, actually. You can see that this was actually, the transfer was successful on base, from where to where. You can see all the details, the contract interactions. I actually kind of want to show it on the Hyperlane Explorer once it's completed. I think that's the best place to see the summary. But as you can see, we just made a transaction from base to Optimism. You can see the block explorer on base. You can see it on Optimism, the contents of the message, how much we paid. Yeah, so you can see the mailbox here, the origin transaction. You can actually view it here as well. And then you can see the one on Optimism. But as you can see, we walked through it for a while. So it took us like 10, 15 minutes or so to deploy. But it's just 2 commands with the Hyperlane CLI to go ahead and deploy. You can also use directly the mailbox if you want to like build the general message passing application where you have a specific use case that is not exactly utilizing warp routes. We also have a TypeScript SDK if you want to build with Hyperlane and try different applications. I think the best place to go is the Hyperlane documentation, where you can find all about the details, both around like learning and implementation. hopefully this was helpful. I know I have a bit more time left, so happy to answer any questions. I hope that, yeah, I hope if there are any like loopholes, I can answer them during this time. Why does it spend so long time? So it's deploying the token, it's deploying the contracts on both base and Optimism. So it doesn't, so I think it's still like a considerably low amount of time for all the deployments that it does. Maybe you can use like a better RPC or a higher speed one for faster deployments. But essentially, like, because it's deploying multiple contracts on both the two chains, it does take like a few minutes, like, at least with the RPC I'm using. Does it support between Solana EVM-based chains? So you can actually deploy a Solana SVM to EVM warp route using Hyperlane. Let me show how you can do that too. We do support like Solana. So you can go over here. Oops, how do I, okay, let's just move it here. I'm gonna come over here, but when I come over here to the guides, to the warp routes, I can go and I can see deploy an EVM to SVM warp routes. So you can follow this guide to do that exactly. Or if you want to deploy like an SVM warp route, you can follow the guide over here. All contracts have been open sourced. Yes, so Hyperlane is fully open sourced. You can go ahead and you can see all the contracts deployed. Let me go ahead and show the Hyperlane monorepo actually. You can go over here. You can see the Hyperlane monorepo. This is all fully open source. Yeah, I think especially when you work in permissionless technology, it is very important to make sure that it's open source. All the contracts that are deployed, you probably want to make sure that they are they're audited, so you can actually go ahead and see the audit reports as well. But basically, this repo is the place where you can find all the information, all the development work, all the contract details. And yeah, it is fully open source. One thing which I did not mention is how to work with the off-chain agents. So I mentioned that there's the relayer. The relayer source code is actually also fully open source, and you can go ahead and you can read upon how the relayer works. You're free to run your own relayer, or you can opt in to go through like a hosted service where Abacus Works, the team, the core developers behind Hyperlane can run the relayer as well, for making it just easier. But it is fully open source, so you can go ahead and you can check out the relayer details. You can also run a validator, which are basically the entities that are validating the messages for the multi-sig ISM. That is one of the most popular ISMs used. It is actually also the default ISM setting. So you can see all the details on how to run a validator over here. Is it suitable for a fresh grad? I definitely think so. I do think it requires some basic knowledge on like the different chains and the infrastructures. But I think interoperability is one of the areas which has a lot of work to do on, and it's very essential for making like a user experience, like a Web2 user experience. So I definitely think that is a very good area to get started, to get more in depth on. It's quite similar to working in like any single blockchain environment as well, except you also work with like a few contracts which enable the communication between chains. Are there any plans to integrate AI? So we have a bounty for building an AI agent with Hyperlane. You can go ahead to the Hyperlane repo to see the bounties we have. Let me see if I can show them right now. If not, we can share them afterwards. I'm not sure where the bounty is exactly. I think it's on the Hyperlane monorepo. Well, I can share this afterwards with a link as well with the team here. But we have a bounty for creating an AI agent.
Yeah. I send the link in our comments.
Oh, amazing. So yeah, you can create like an AI agent. I know a few teams which are already working on it, and I think it's one of the coolest concepts. You can basically, yeah, I think it depends on how you want to implement it, but you can directly use the code that is used for the Hyperlane CLI to kind of create like it for the AI agent, like just like an MCP module. And I think it's very cool. I haven't seen it working in live yet, but I hope to see it soon. Any incentives for me to join the ecosystem, like providing LP and earn? So there are, I would say, I think it's a very growing ecosystem overall. So I think there's like a lot of personal reasons to get started building on cross-chain interoperability space. And yeah, being early in like one of the crucial areas, I think has a lot of, well, this is my personal opinions and not any kind of financial advice or anything like that, but I do think it represents like a lot of opportunities. Let me actually close my screen since I don't share anymore. So if I've deployed my own EVM chain and want to bridge USDT from EVM chains such as BSC or Polygon to my EVM chain, what steps are generally required? So basically, I think warp routes are the use case that you are looking for. So if you have your own chain and you have an asset there, but you want to talk with the wider ecosystem, and as I mentioned, Hyperlane is already deployed in over 150 chains. So they, like over 150 chains have the Hyperlane mailboxes, which you can send messages to and from. And as we just created like a simple like warp route for the Phi token, I think that the warp route is the case which you are looking for. From our group, in the example just now, the cross-chain between the two chains is realized by way of kernel configuration. I need to choose from if I need to add a new chain, is it implemented by Hyperlane? So to add a new chain, you can go over to the docs and follow the guide to deploy Hyperlane to your own chain. Basically, what you do then is you need to add it to your local registry when you're running it. Once you add Hyperlane to your new chain, you can also make like a PR to the Hyperlane registry to have it in there as well. But you can basically deploy Hyperlane on a new chain that is not already in the list that we saw. And it's completely free to deploy. The only extra thing you need to do is you need to open a PR to the Hyperlane registry to add your new chain if you want like wider people to also communicate with it. Yeah, if you want to do it locally yourself, you can basically like add it to your Hyperlane registry when you run the commands. And this might sound a bit complicated when I say it, but the guide explains it very well and like with all the steps. So you can basically go to how to deploy Hyperlane on your own chain guide and follow the steps there. What are the advantages and disadvantages and difference of XR? So I think different projects take different routes. What we specifically focused on is we are on 150, like more than 150 chains, which is a very wide reach. It is permissionless and open source, which I think is one of the most crucial and most exciting parts about working about Hyperlane. So I definitely say that, yeah, different projects, focusing on different aspects. For me, the special part is you have the security configurations, which you can configure yourself. And the fact that it's permissionless deployment gives it a lot of flexibility for developers. How does transaction finality? This is a good question too. How does Hyperlane ensure transaction finality during cross-chain asset transfers? This depends on your Hyperlane, on your security module settings. So how do you want to verify that the message was actually sent from one chain to another? The Interchain Security Modules, Hyperlane ISM, is basically how you verify that. It could be using like a multi-site setup. You can have like a 2 of 3 validator signings. You can have a ZK ISM, which verifies, but your ISM, like the modular security aspect, means that you can choose the security configuration depending on your risk tolerance. Which parts of code should I read first? I think the Hyperlane docs are a good place to start, and it depends on what you're more interested in. Like, are you more interested in like building out security modules? Are you more interested in building out like a Hyperlane AI agent, which you can go to Claude and you can be like, hey Claude, like deploy like a Hyperlane warp route from X chain to Y chain. You can leverage the skills that you already have and focus on what you're most interested in my opinion. And I think the docs are a good place to start. And then the Hyperlane mono repo is obviously going to be like the building, like the main questions where you have the main questions. For any other questions, you can also go to the Hyperlane Discord. There's a developers channel. You can go over there to ask any questions you might have. I also think the bounties are a nice place because then you can see, okay, like how can I build something and also earn something in return. But in general, I think just deploying like a small project, sharing it with us, like feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to like hear what you're doing, see how we can partner more. But I think just trying out a first bits of code, which you find most interesting, is generally a good way to start. Multi-sig and enough blocks. Not sure how to guarantee the transfer atomicity. Any strategies on that? Yeah, so I think the most detailed, like the way the transfers are validated is mostly the modular security aspect, which is how you define yourself. So I think the most, like the default configuration we use is the multi-sig ISM, which verifies that if 2 out of 3, generally it's like a 2 out of 3 setup, 2 out of 3 validators sign it, then that is considered like a valid transaction. But of course, if you are like, hey, I want to do another setting, you are free to do that. We've seen like the setup work in most cases. You can also increase the validator set, and you can, have some validator assessment scores, which is kind of how we keep track. But it really depends on the security setup you have, and that's kind of how you can verify the messages. I think it's great to see a lot of questions pop up. It shows that I feel people have been interested. I'll give another minute if anyone has questions. Oh yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. 如果大家在看直播有问题的，可以把问题中文也可以发到那个评论区，我们可以来帮忙翻译，或者B 站或者是那个微信视频号的都可以。对，看看，如果没有什么问题，好像。
So to answer Hyperlane's unique advantages, as I mentioned, I think modular security is one of the biggest aspects. The flexible architecture and the open source and permissionless, like it being open source and permissionless allows us to be on over 150 chains. So that is, I think, one of the largest features we can reach. So being connected to over 150 chains by default is a huge advantage, and configurable security is another one, which I think is the greatest. But yeah, I take a lot of pride on us being on over 150 chains.
So anyone have more question? 大家如果有问题可以再发，如果没的话，我们就继续。Okay. So let's wait for 13 seconds. Okay.
And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm very active on Twitter. My Twitter is @tweets_. Feel free to reach out. Feel free to like share what you're building. I'm also, I spend a lot of time on the Hyperlane Discord and the Hyperlane channels, so you can definitely find me around there. But hopefully, if you plan to build, I definitely want to hear, so please do reach out to me.
Yeah, okay. With not more question. Okay, let me check with other platform if there are more questions. Hello, Ada, could you hear me?
I can hear.
Yeah, okay. There are no more questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. As I mentioned, the docs.hyperlane.xyz is the best place, and I hope to hear back from you guys. Bye.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And OK. 今天那个Max， 你要不要说个话 ？Hello， Marcus， 你能听到吗？
OK， 你在叫我是吧？
对，然后今天那个 Marcus 是Hyperlane 的，就是亚太区的负责人。然后大家如果之后有任何问题，也可以找 Max 沟通。对，然后我们其实也有一个 Hyperlane 的中文社区，然后麻烦到时候我们小伙伴可以发在这个评论区，包括直播的这个聊天区，大家可以加入我们的中文社区，关注我们的这个公众号或者 Twitter。然后 Marcus 你可以看看要不要讲两句。
谢谢大家，那个谢谢 OpenBuild 啊，Yeah, Ada, thank you for the wonderful presentation. Really appreciate. And I think we can like arrange like more and more some kind of like workshop and also 101 like step-by-step lessons or lectures helping like Chinese community to get more familiar with the Hyperlanes. 对，然后那个我们这边其实今年是着重的一些战略性的目标是支持大家的，就是在 APEC， 最重要的是这个华语区的一些开发者，所以我们今年也会跟OpenBuild 还有各个的这个开发者社区的一些伙伴们，我们都会在这个区域内组织一些这个更多的活动吧，不管是线上还是线下。然后如果大家有兴趣的话，请大家多关注我们的这个中文Twitter账号，然后也多关注我们的这个微信的公众号。有任何的问题或者是想法，都可以在我们所有的这个平台上面跟我们进行沟通。我们今年也会推出一些激励的一些计划，所以请大家持续的关注和期待，好吗？也谢谢Ian，谢谢 OpenBuild， 谢谢。
OK， 不客气。好，行，那我们今天整体的分享可能就到这里。OK， Thank you, Ada. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.